Welcome to Anews. I am Mustafa Kocakaner. You are watching Turkey's Diplomacy. In today's episode, we are set to discuss Ukraine-Russia war, Turkey's recent foreign policy engagements in the Eurasia region, and the ongoing Israeli atrocities in the Middle East. I will be joined by Daily Sabah's editorial coordinator, Dr. Mehmet Çelik, and political analyst Javed Rana from Pakistan's capital, Islamabad. We will discuss many important topics, but before our discussion, let's take a look at our news story about US President Donald Trump's recent stance on the Ukraine-Russia war.
At this point, we're working on President Putin.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Wednesday said Russian President Vladimir Putin may be intentionally delaying negotiations on a ceasefire in the war in Ukraine and expressed disappointment at Russian bombing.
We're going to find out whether or not he's tapping us along or not. And if he is, we'll respond a little bit differently. I'm very disappointed at what happened a couple of nights now where people were killed in the middle of what you would call a negotiation. I'm very disappointed by that.
When asked by a reporter what was stopping him from imposing new sanctions on Russia, Trump said he didn't want to scuttle a potential peace deal.
If I think I'm close to getting a deal, I don't want to screw it up by doing that.
Trump's remarks in the Oval Office came as the United States and Russia quarreled in public over the intensifying Ukraine war. Trump warned in a social media post that Putin was, quote, playing with fire. Afterward, Putin's foreign policy aide told a state TV reporter that Trump's remark suggested that he is not well informed on the realities of the war. Meanwhile, the war intensified. Russia said it had downed nearly 300 Ukrainian drones overnight, while Ukraine said Russia had launched almost 90 drones and 5 ballistic missiles. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Russia also gathered 50,000 troops near the northern Sumy region. Zelensky was in Berlin on Wednesday meeting with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who pledged to support Ukraine in producing long-range missiles to bolster its defenses. In a joint press conference, Zelensky said Russia was persistently searching for reasons to delay talks to end the war.
They
do not want to hold talks in neutral Geneva, but they want to have them in a NATO member state, which is Turkey. You see, it is not about which country will host talks and which alliance it belongs to. It is all about Putin and their desire to postpone. They are constantly looking for reasons to postpone a format which can bring an end to the war.
After speaking to Trump on May 19th, Putin said he had agreed to work with Ukraine on a memorandum which would set out the framework of a peace deal. On Wednesday, Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov said that Russia proposed holding the next round of direct talks with Ukraine in Istanbul on June 2nd, with the aim of achieving a sustainable peace settlement. Ukraine responded, urging Russia to share its memorandum on peace without delay, so that a meeting in Istanbul, quote, won't be empty and can truly move us closer to ending the war.
Mr. Çelik, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mustafa.
As you know, the United States has been pushing for dialogue and diplomacy between Ukraine and Russia to reach an immediate ceasefire between two warring sides. But Russia's recent escalation in Ukraine is surprising the US President Donald Trump, and yesterday he also threatened to impose sanctions on Russia. What is your assessment about the ongoing Ukraine-Russia war and any possible peace efforts for the negotiations between Ukraine and Russia?
Well, this is a good question. It's good to be with you on the show, Mustafa. Donald Trump is frustrated, and he's, his personal style is, he has this impatience when it comes to diplomacy. He's frustrated for several reasons, not just because there's recent attacks that Russia carried out against Ukraine, but he's also frustrated because he has pledged to end this war very quickly, very immediately, as soon as he gets in the office, and that has been delayed quite significantly, and it's been a long time, over more than 100 days. He pledged to end the war in 24 hours, then now it's pushed to 6 months. We will see what happens, but nevertheless, he has made a promise, but he's not able to keep that promise where he's responsible to his voters due to the pledges he made. He's also frustrated because he believes he's not on the same page with Mr. Zelensky as far as what has been exposed to the media. Thirdly, he's frustrated because he thinks that, in my opinion, he thinks that what he wants to do with this conflict, what he wants to do with Ukraine's position, is in conflict with the European side. So there is this race of influence over Ukraine, where Germany very recently said that there will be no restrictions on long-range missiles for Ukraine, where Trump, I'm not sure if this is the same thing on his mind, to further escalate the tensions. He doesn't want to impose the sanctions, he says, because there is a new negotiation platform that has been set up, in Istanbul a couple of weeks ago. Although the glass was half full at that meeting, we didn't reach a ceasefire or any major deal didn't take place. But nevertheless, I think the fact that there is this platform now, the fact that some sort of willingness from both sides is there, despite both sides trying hard to get position, still the prisoners exchange and some willingness to continue these talks from both sides is also positive. But Trump is frustrated because, in my opinion, he feels like he's not taken serious by both Putin and also, more importantly, by Mr. Zelensky. And this is frustrating him. Someone like Trump, who's has a celebrity-like style when it comes to running the show in the world politics, that distant position from Zelensky, I think it frustrates him. Nevertheless, I think both sides want to maintain their positions, but they still voice willingness to talk. I mean, Mr. Lavrov yesterday, past couple of days when he was meeting with Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, he said that Istanbul would be a good place to meet on June 2nd. And his Ukrainian counterpart also said that we can meet. We'll see what happens, but so far I think Ukraine is stuck between the U.S. position on how to end this conflict and the European position on how to, whether to end this conflict or not. I mean, the fact that they're saying we will lift the restrictions for long-range missiles, I think it further escalates the tensions. And this conflict between Europe and the United States it's an advantage for Putin, and hence why there is the escalation of attacks.
Mr. Çelik, yesterday Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky paid an official visit to Germany, and Germany's new Chancellor Friedrich Merz reiterated his country's determination to support Ukraine's territorial integrity and political sovereignty against so-called Russian aggression. And can you evaluate the European actors in the conflict? Because Russian foreign policy makers are also accusing the European nations of sabotaging peace talks between Ukraine and Russia. How can you evaluate the European stance against the Ukraine-Russia war?
For Trump, for the United States, Trump doesn't want this conflict to end. To continue any longer. One, because he has made this pledge to end the war, and he doesn't want to start any wars, or he wants to bring an end to wars. He wants to be remembered as a president that had done this. But European side doesn't want. Trump doesn't want this to continue because he sees this as a burden on himself, where he wants to deal with bigger problems internationally. But when it comes to Europe, the fact that Russia is bordering Europe, European Union borders at least, geographically, the close distance and the dependency of Europe on Russia when it comes to gas, etc., further complicates the situation. On the one hand, they want to eliminate this war, as it is very, very costly for them for many different reasons. But on the other hand, if Ukraine does not defend itself and compromises when it comes to land, that makes the situation more complicated for Europe as Russia gets closer to Europe, and that threat of invasion, further expansion, becomes a source of problem for Europe. And nevertheless, I think this Ukraine and Russia conflict, it is not something that will end as a problem for Europe, even if there is a ceasefire, even if there is a permanent ceasefire and the war comes to an end, even if Ukraine gives up some of the land that Russia currently occupies and gives up their territorial sovereignty in that sense, still the problem, the Russian problem for Europe will continue. As Russia sees this, the problem is not a Ukraine-Russia problem, really. It is a Russia and the West, Russia and Europe, or Russia and NATO problem in the bigger picture. So European countries want to escalate the tensions or maximize their position. One, because there is this conflict between U.S. and Russia with regards to security, between Europe and the United States when it comes to security. Two, in the new this transition to multipolar world, Europe wants to ensure its security is solidified. And for that leveraging your hand against Russia is something that is needed. Previously, the sides came to a very close agreement in Istanbul talks, in the previous phase of Istanbul talks. But as it's been exposed to media, at the time, the UK's influence over Zelensky made him pull out from the talks. This has been very widely discussed, and I think this sabotage terminology, or this concept of Europe influencing Zelensky so that the peace negotiations do not continue, comes from that experience as well. I think if Europe wants to leverage its hands, coming to a peaceful, contributing to peace and contributing to these peace talks would be on their advantage, whereas Trump is shining for his efforts to end this war. Europe is seen as the escalator or the side that does not want this tension to calm down.
Mr. Çelik, it seems that there are right now three different approaches to the Ukraine-Russia war, and the first approach is the American one. The United States is calling for immediate ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia and cessation of the war. And the second approach is the European one, and it seems that European nations are in favor of ongoing conflicts between Ukraine and Russia right now. But on the other hand, there is also the third approach, and Turkey's balanced approach, I think, is praised by the international community, and Turkish decision makers reiterated every opportunity that there will be no losers in just peace, and there will be no winners at the ongoing war. How can you evaluate Turkey's balanced approach to the Ukraine-Russia war? Because, as we know, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan paid two-day official visit to Russia this weekend. Right now, he is visiting Ukraine to discuss what can be done in terms of reaching a ceasefire between two warring sides in Eastern Europe. How can you evaluate Turkey's diplomatic efforts to put an end to the ongoing conflicts in the region?
Well, since the beginning of the war, in fact, since even before that, with the annexation of Crimea, Turkey has been opposed to Russian invasion of Ukraine. Turkey does not accept that and has voiced that position. At the same time, Turkey has politically supported Ukraine. Turkey has very close ties with Ukraine at many different levels, economically or in terms of defense. We have sent our drones to Ukraine. Turkey has Bayraktar drones were sent to Ukraine. But at the same time, Turkey has very strategic relations with Russia. At the time when this war started and the sides were being decided, who's going to side with who phase, Turkey decided that they will not pick a side because there is no winners in the war. And there's no winners in the war, and there will be no losers in a peace. This is Turkey's approach when it comes to all the conflicts around the world, actually. So that, as an actor and a key actor in its region, Turkey maintained its relations with Russia. Turkey maintained its strategic, pragmatic relationship with Russia when it comes to Syria and Lebanon, and when it comes to the Ukraine conflict. At the same time, it's continued its position and the opposition against the Russian invasion of Ukraine. This has made Turkey become the trustworthy partner for both sides at the time where no other actually options were made available that can establish a channel of communication between Ukraine and Russia. Given the very strong relationship between Mr. Erdogan and Mr. Putin, Mr. Erdogan and Mr. Zelensky, especially now, even with the new administration in the United States, Mr. Erdogan's relationship with Mr. Trump has elevated Turkey's position as a key mediator in this specific conflict. Nevertheless, when we see Turkey's rising profile in the region, it has had this prestige internationally for its role as an active mediator in many different conflicts. We look at the conflict between Ethiopia and Somalia in the Horn of Africa, we see Turkey a very key mediator between the sides. When we look at even in the back channels, through intelligence or otherwise, Turkey has been very active when it comes to the negotiations for a ceasefire or exchange of hostages between Palestine or between Hamas and the Israeli side. So Turkey has this approach to peace and to approach to stability, not only in its region, but internationally, because we know that everybody, regardless of this new, isolation policies by many countries or having a very ultra-nationalistic view when it comes to trade and that interdependency, Turkey still believes that, be it regionally or internationally, conflict does not solidify your strength, but rather cooperation will be something that you can build on among the nations around the world. However, when it comes to certain conflicts, of course, Turkey had a very strong sided position. In the conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia, for example, Turkey rightfully supported the Azerbaijan side. Now Turkey is offering its mediation role as an effort to bring the tensions down between India and Pakistan. So this active engagement in international conflict comes from not because Turkey is simply willing to find a solution to the war, but Turkey's active engagement in many different parts of the world through its very strong diplomatic muscle now, which is actually also backed by its military power, with its political leadership Mr. Erdogan has been putting forward internationally. Turkey's role as a mediator has brought it a very strong prestige that different sides in different conflict can have this trust relationship with Turkey. Because, when we look at India and Pakistan, of course, it's our traditional ally. We have very strong strategic relations, but Turkey also has very working relations with India as well. When it comes to Ethiopia and Somalia, for example, Turkey has very good relations between the two sides in a conflict that is in a conflict that has very historical roots in the region of Horn of Africa. So despite these very historic tensions between different sides, from Ukraine to India, Pakistan to Ethiopia and Somalia, the fact that Turkey has this balanced but pragmatic relationship with all countries around the world, I think it has elevated its prestige, and this is why it is able. Mr. Erdogan can speak to Mr. Zelensky and Mr. Putin at the same time. Mr. Fidan was in Moscow yesterday. Today he's in Ukraine. This is not something that many leaders around the world or many diplomats around the world can actually do when it comes to conflicts around the world.
Mr. Çelik, I appreciate your valuable comments. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan visited Russia this week, and right now he is currently paying an official visit to Ukraine to discuss ongoing peace talks between the two warring sides. But let's take a look at Turkey-Russia relations in the ongoing geopolitical situation in the region.
Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan held a high-level meeting with his Russian counterpart Sergey Lavrov in Moscow on Tuesday. The Turkish and Russian decision-makers discussed bilateral ties, regional stability, and pressing global issues.
We are working to ensure that our natural gas supply from Russia continues and that the Akuyu nuclear power plant becomes operational as soon as possible. We want to deepen our bilateral relations in a way that will not be affected by geopolitical challenges. We act with this understanding and will continue to take steps that will benefit our people.
Addressing the war in Ukraine, Fidan welcomed the recent prisoner exchange and voiced hope for a broader ceasefire, reaffirming Turkey's readiness to support dialogue and mediation efforts.
We are pleased that the exchange agreed upon in the peace talks was completed last weekend. We hope that the negotiations will quickly evolve into a ceasefire and a permanent peace in the future. As our president has stated to all parties, we are ready to provide all kinds of support in this process.
The people that we are talking about right now, of course, they want to damage these relations, because if this war ends, their political careers and they won't have any political future. It will end because they are egoists.
Turning to the situation in Gaza, the Turkish foreign minister delivered a firm message.
The ongoing genocide and human tragedy in Gaza must stop as soon as possible. Otherwise, as we have always stated, it is impossible for anyone to prevent the spread of a great chaos that will also include Israel. All this blood, tears and pain will not remain without results, and this must stop as soon as possible.
He also expressed support for the Syrian government's growing capacity to combat terrorism, emphasizing Ankara's backing for unifying military groups under a national army and command to help restore Syria's territorial integrity and security.
We see that the Syrian administration is improving its capabilities and opportunities in the field of combating terrorism and organized crime every day. We support efforts to bring all military groups together under a national army and central command.
Welcome to Turkey's Diplomacy again, Mr. Çelik. Today there are many important headlines in the front page of Daily Sabah, but I want to start with the Ukraine-Russia war. As you know, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky pitches a three-way summit with US President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin to end the ongoing conflicts in the region. Is it realistic to expect any meeting among Zelensky, Putin and Trump right now?
Well, Mr. Zelensky, when Mr. Putin said that we can start negotiations in Istanbul 2 weeks ago, or more than about 10 days ago, he said, if Mr. Putin wants to come and meet me, I will be in Istanbul. But I mean, it doesn't seem very realistic at this point for me to see that a summit can take place between Mr. Putin, Mr. Zelensky, and Mr. Trump as a three-way summit, because Mr. Putin seems very hesitant to meet Mr. Zelensky, as he does not see him a legitimate leader. So for that reason, I think for him to meet Mr. Zelensky, he sees from Moscow, the way he evaluates the situation in Ukraine and the way he sees Mr. Zelensky, I don't think that he can see that he's a counterpart, for the lack of a better word. So for that reason, I don't think, even if Mr. Trump and Mr. Zelensky are willing, I mean, Mr. Trump said that he may come to, during his Gulf visit, he may come to Istanbul. He may stop by in Istanbul if this visit takes place, if Mr. Putin comes to Turkey, but he didn't. And I don't think this will be very possible. I'm not sure if it is very realistic at this point.
Mr. Çelik, as you know, children are being starved to death in the occupied Palestinian territory, Gaza Strip, right now. And United States and Israel have recently launched new humanitarian aid program in the region, but UNRWA slams Israeli Gaza aid model as distraction from atrocities. How can you evaluate the latest humanitarian tragedy happening in the occupied Palestinian Gaza Strip?
Well, I mean, as the genocide is ongoing, of course, we cover that. We cover a Gaza-related story every single day in every issue that we have at Daily Sabah. Because this is, although some other important issues do emerge internationally, I think one of the most darkest moments of our past history is what's happening in Gaza but due to the Israeli genocide against the Palestinian people. And you mentioned hunger. This has been, I mean, hunger is not something, I don't think that it's a very natural disaster. It can happen due to drought, etc. But here in Gaza, hunger or famine, as it is now, is used as a weapon against the Palestinian people. The images that we saw yesterday or the day before yesterday, the style where they had them actually lined up and in wired corridors to deliver the aid, this reminded us another dark history, another dark moment in the history when the Holocaust or you know, how the Nazi camps delivered, I mean, categorized people or situated them during the Holocaust. So this is something that is not, you know, that dark moment that everybody tries to, so they said that it shouldn't repeat again. Now it is being repeated in Gaza, in Rafah, when you know, in southern Gaza part. This is, of course, it is taking place where the whole world is watching and they're not able to do anything. I think this is something that is very shameful for the international community and the leaders of the international community, where they, you know, especially those who can have influence over Gaza, over Netanyahu, over the war cabinet in Tel Aviv, namely the United States. And I mean, they had the criticism coming up against this, the images that were surfaced from that scene, but they dismissed the criticism. I mean, the Western leaders, their opposition now or their remarks have simply changed, but that of course hasn't translated into a policy change with regards to the humanitarian crisis, with regards to war crimes taking place in Gaza. And you know, I think in 10 years from now, 20 years from now, or 100 years from now, when we look back to what took place, all those who remain complicit to this genocide will be remembered not very brightly and not very, you know, in a way that they share the responsibility, Mustafa. I think this is something that you cannot ignore. The international community has a responsibility to make sure humanitarian access can take place and make sure that the war crimes come to an end. Then they have to make sure that those responsible for these war crimes come to an account.
Mr. Çelik, today's main headline for Daily Sabah is the growing alliance between Turkey, Azerbaijan and Pakistan. And we know that one nation, two states motto is defining the strategic cooperation between Ankara and Baku. And right now, Islamabad is joining them. How can you evaluate the latest emerging alliance among these three countries? And how will this alliance affect the geopolitical landscape in the wider Eurasia region?
Turkey has this Asia Anews policy. Within that policy, Turkey's engagement with Asia has grown significantly, not only in Central Asia, but also Southeast Asia. Mr. Erdogan was very recently in Malaysia, Indonesia, and Pakistan, and he was very warmly welcomed. He was received in a very popular manner by all the leaders and the people of those countries. Nevertheless, you know, the motto that you say, one nation, two states, now Mr. Erdogan yesterday in his speech, he said one nation, three states. He included Pakistan too. And this is strategically, of course, given Pakistan's influence in the region, Turkey and Pakistan relationship that goes back, you know, many decades, historic relations, cultural relations, and now defense and strategic economic relations that Turkey has with Pakistan. Of course, you know, with Azerbaijan and Turkey, we always see that brotherhood, or with that, you know, the very close alliance that brought the motto of two states and one nation. But now Pakistan is joining this. Pakistan also supported, Azerbaijan during the conflict with Armenia. Also, Azerbaijan voiced its support for Pakistan during the very recent conflict with India. Still, I think, as a key leader in the Muslim world, Turkey wants to ensure that it can solidify its partnership with many actors around the world, but particularly with big nations among the Muslim world, and Pakistan is one of them. Pakistan is a nuclear power. We should not forget that. Turkey sided with Pakistan, but it still had a very balanced approach to the conflict with India. Now Turkey also called for mediating mediating the conflict between India and Pakistan. But these three countries have always had very traditionally strong relations. I think the leader-to-leader relationship also now brings more tangible results from that cultural and historical relationship between these countries.
Mr. Çelik, you summarized very well the Daily Sabah's front page, and we wrapped up our Daily Sabah part of today's Turkey's episode of program. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan yesterday was in Azerbaijan, recently liberated Lachin region. He reiterated Turkey's determination to strengthen its cooperation both with Azerbaijan and Pakistan. He also called for immediate ceasefire in Gaza, and he called on the international community to increase pressure on Israel to convince the Israeli decision makers to stop their military offensive in the region.
Azerbaycan topraklarının özgürlüğüne kavuşmasıyla birlikte artık bölgenin istikrar, refah ve kalkınmanın odağı haline gelmesini arzu ediyoruz.
Speaking at the Turkey-Azerbaijan-Pakistan Trilateral Summit on Wednesday, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan underscored the importance of establishing lasting peace and stability in the region, urging enhanced collaboration among the three nations.
Türkiye, Azerbaycan ve Pakistan olarak düzenli üçlü zirveler ve bakanlar düzeyinde toplantılar tertiplemek suretiyle işbirliğimizi kurumsallaştıracağız. Savunma alanında işbirliğimizi derinleştirip terörle mücadele ve sınır aşan tehditlere karşı ortak kararlılığımızı sürdüreceğiz.
Turning to the crisis in Gaza, the Turkish leader delivered a strong rebuke of Israeli military operations that have led to thousands of civilian deaths, many of them children.
Biz Gazze'de göz göre göre katledilen masum çocuklar ve insanların hakkını savunmaya devam etmekte kararlıyız. Bölgemizin huzurunu bozmaya çalışan tüm girişimlere karşı duracağımızı bir kez daha vurgulamak istiyorum.
He called on the international community to step up pressure on Israel to establish a permanent ceasefire and ensure the swift and uninterrupted delivery of humanitarian aid to Gaza.
Coğrafyamız kana ve gözyaşına doymuştur. Buradan tüm dünyaya Gazze'de kalıcı ateşkesin tesisi ve Gazze'ye kesintisiz ve acil insani yardımların ulaştırılması için İsrail yönetimi üzerindeki baskıyı artırmaları çağrısında bulunuyoruz.
Political analyst Javit Rana is joining us right now from Pakistan's capital Islamabad. Mr. Rana, welcome to our program.
Thank you.
Mr. Rana, I want to start with the growing alliance between Turkey, Azerbaijan and Pakistan. As you know, yesterday, Pakistani Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif hailed Turkey's and Azerbaijan's role in terms of de-escalating the tensions with India. And how do Turkey, Azerbaijan and Pakistan to institutionalize their trilateral cooperation?
I think the gathering of three countries in Baku indicates that, in fact, they were celebrating their victories. It's not just Pakistan's military victory against India. It's also Azerbaijan's military victory not long ago against Armenia. And then most recently, we have seen that Turkey has won after another military victories in Syria. It has managed the terror groups like PKK and YPG, and apart from that, a hostile government in Damascus is no longer there. And now there is a government which is a pro Turkey, and these are all indicators that the three countries in their own domain have been having military victories at a time which is very uncertain because the international order is in disarray. And very importantly, that all these three countries behind the scene have been helping each other. It's not just politically, it's not just diplomatically, it's also militarily. And I think there was a lot of behind the scene things which were happening. I don't want to make them public when Turkey was there in Syria. So again, that is an indicator that there is a kind of an undeclared alliance among Azerbaijan, Pakistan, and Turkey, and that is a fortifying with the passage of every day. And most recently, we have seen that now there appears to be some kind of a realization in India and also some of the other countries which are not very friendly to these three countries, Pakistan, Azerbaijan, and Turkey, that this alliance is emerging and they are feeling a bit threatened. So far as Turkey is concerned, Turkey's help was certainly there. So far Pakistan's military victory is concerned against India. Turkey's manufactured drones were there. And then I think in the naval field, Turkey's help was also there, which actually deterred India to carry out an attack on Pakistan's naval warships. So again, in a broader picture, all these indicators are suggesting that in months and years to come, this alliance is going to further grow, not only in terms of more and more military cooperation, but also, more importantly, expanding their trade ties, which are extremely important at a time when, again, the point I earlier on made, the international order is in disarray, and now there is a growing trend among the regional countries that they are having their trades in their local currencies, in their national currencies, and there are also small forums, blogs like BRICS, and these are all indicators that in years to come, the alliance among these three countries is going to further expand. And I also foresee that some more countries are going to join these alliance of these three trilateral countries.
Mr. Rana, my last question for you will be about ongoing Israeli atrocities in the Gaza Strip and Israeli expansionism in the Middle East. As you know, Israel has been recently facing deepening global diplomatic isolation, and international backlash grows against Israel's military actions in the occupied Gaza Strip, and Palestinian state recognition against international push. And the United States is still one of the most important supporters of Israeli policies in the region. Do you think that the United States will continue to turn a blind eye to Israeli atrocities in the region?
Well, I think, frankly speaking, the current government in the White House is blindsided by the Zionist network in Washington. We should not attach more hopes with the recent skipping of Donald Trump's visit to Israel when he was touring UAE and Saudi Arabia and Qatar. And I think in a broader context, we should realize the fact that the problem has been between Netanyahu and the Donald Trump on Iran, on how to handle Iran, because Donald Trump fears that Israel wants a war with Iran, something the Americans don't want. And I think in a similar fashion, Donald Trump wants some kind of arrangement on Gaza, but that arrangement does not include two-state solution. We should not forget that he is the same Donald Trump who has been advocating expelling of people from Gaza, who has been threatening people in Gaza that they would be killed if they don't expel Hamas, or if they don't leave Gaza. Again, we know his rhetoric. We also know that he is ambiguous on how to deal with the occupied West Bank, because he did not respond to a question when he was asked that does he also want the expelling of people from the West Bank. So in a broader context, it is a evangelical government in White House, and there is an alliance between Zionist and evangelical government extremist Jews in Tel Aviv. And I think they are pursuing their religious theological agenda, which obviously includes an expansion of Israel. And we know their map is by and large includes the entire Middle East, even parts of the Turkey. So we should be we should exercise caution while expecting anything positive from Washington at this particular point of time.
Mr. Rana, thank you for your valuable comments, and Mr. Çelik, I appreciate your valuable evaluations about Turkey's foreign policy landscape. And that's it for today's episode of Turkey's Diplomacy. Thank you for joining us, and see you next time with more critical insights into Turkey's evolving foreign policy engagements and landscape.